Yasis and welcome to Vasily's garden. I'm standing next to my roses. That's right. It's standard rose pruning time. Well, roses, in fact, in general, need to be pruned. And these ones, as you can see each year, they're getting bigger and bigger. And I'm going to cut them back this year a little bit harder than usual, I think. I've just thought about that, and I'll explain to you what I'm talking about. And we talk about cutting back to, a couple of buds facing outwards, for example. Let me get this out of the way. Beautiful flower, by the way, but we don't need it at the moment. So what we see here, this is this year's growth, or the spring summer that we've just had before. You can see the lime green colour that it is there, and the older wood, second year growth is just there. It can be sometimes 3 years and older. Now, we would cut back to a couple of buds if we're trying to establish a small head to get it larger, that is. If we're trying to establish it to become a larger head, we would cut back to this year's growth, and 2 or 3 buds from the base of where it starts. So you've got one, you've got a bud there too, and you can cut just back to there if you like. And the same on this side, maybe to there. And what happens here, we're growing the head of the rose, the actual standard. We're making it bigger each time as each year goes by. Now, if you want your heads to become bigger, and I'm talking about your roses, not your head, the roses itself like a standard, if you want that to grow as a bigger head each year, do it something like that. For example, you can see this one here, it's quite large. It's got a lot of new growth on it. We didn't cut it back in the last round. We let it run its race. But now if we're going to cut it back, we can cut it back to the current year's growth, which is the summer that's gone by, or we can cut it back to last year's growth down there. And that way we stop the head from growing too big. Now, if you've been watching some of the episodes that I've filmed around the traps, in particular Alex's garden, and we saw his standard roses, he cuts them back down to the same knuckle every year. I'm not going to do it here because I'm not going to cut them that hard, but for example, let's say I was cutting to this point at the end of the growing season. Let me just get this out of the way. If I was cutting to this point at the end of the season, at the end of every year that goes by, I'd be cutting back there again and that off again and leaving the old wood. And that way it sprouts up again because there are little buds everywhere on these, and it'll keep shooting up the following year, but it starts from exactly the same spot. And over time, that will become thick and gnarly looking like that down there. I can actually bring these right back down to these points here, the old growth, 2-year-old and 3-year-old growth, and get the head to start all over again. But that really depends on the health and the vitality of the plant itself. If you've got a little bit of black canker developing or dieback on it, by all means cut it hard and get rid of all that dead, disease and damaged wood. For example, there's some in here. Have a look at that in there. Let me just get my hand in here and cut that off. That is dead. So we just remove all the dead disease and damage, as we do with our fruit trees. And for now, let's cut this back and open it up. Outward facing buds is what we want, and remove any crossovers going on in the middle. We've got a lot going on in the middle here. See all that there? Let me just clean this up. I'm going to cut this pretty hard, and I'm going to be pretty quick with this, folks. But then we're going to go back and clean it up a little bit later. Well, straight after we finish, that is. So let me just get rid of all the stuff that I think I'm not going to use regardless, and a little bit longer than I would normally, to give me some access to the center of the rose. I'd normally hit these with a hedge trimmer, and I'd cut them back a little bit longer than I would normally with a secateurs. And the reason I use a hedge trimmer is because I've got a lot of roses. Too many, in fact, to deal with. So I hit them hard, they all get buzzed down pretty quick. And if I don't get a chance to finish them all in the one day, at least I've knocked them down pretty hard. As you can see what I'm doing here, but I've left a lot of this year's growth on it, this summer's growth that we've had on it. I don't want it. See this spindly thing down here, for example? That's no good to me. That thing there, no good. And there's dieback on there as well. So we'll clean that up a little bit better as we go on. But all this stuff here, that's useless. And that's what we're going to do with these roses. We're going to thin out some of the old wood as well, because we've got a little bit of old wood here that needs to be replaced. Didn't cut that properly. There's a lot going on. And sometimes you need to take your time to work out what you're cutting off, because remember, they'll re-sprout, they'll bush up again. There's a crossover. Look at this mess here. See all that going on in there? Let me get around here properly. All that is ugly. So we just cut it off down to there for now. We'll cut that. There's nothing to grow in here for now. So that, for example, there, that dog leg's useless. That's got to come off. Everybody's got their own method of pruning. This is mine. That's not a happy branch there, so that's got to come off completely. Yeah, and don't mind the lighthouse in the middle of the poor rose. I didn't position it there, but I did leave it there when I acquired these wonderful plants. In some homes, most people that I've seen, well, I won't say most people, some homes that I've gone to have a look at their roses when they prune them back, this is what they look like in their winter prune. You can get away with that, really. At the end of the day, you can, but what we're going to have here is with every new shoot that comes up, it's just going to multiply and get thicker and thicker. See how we start with one little leg here coming along and all of a sudden it forks out? If we leave a double there, it'll become double and triple there, and the same in here. So that stuff in the middle you don't want to keep, or you just pick out the better ones of the lot. You can see it's already budding up there. It's really early, folks. The weather's been warm today, got up to about 17 degrees. Ridiculous, and the sun when it came out, I needed to put some sunscreen on. Well, not me, but somebody, not me. Folks, now, I know we're doing the fruit tree workshops where we're doing pruning on fruit trees, and just looking at this now, I'm thinking maybe there'll be some of you who want to do some rose pruning, and if there's anybody out there who's interested in doing rose pruning, feel free to leave a comment in the in whatever platform you're watching it on, and then I'll consider it. If we get enough people interested in it, I'll probably set some up so we can do some pruning of it. But let's get back to the serious stuff now. This is the real time. I'm getting rid of all this stuff here. I'm going to cut this harder this year, and I'm going to thin out the double branches. All right, so I'm just filling around here at the moment, finding a couple of double buds, or what double buds, a bud there, for example. There's one over here, and I'm happy with that. I'm just going to cut it back to that. It's a little bit weird looking. There are many different techniques in pruning roses. One for me is just to thin it out, and look at all this in here. That's never going to perform well. That's already got dieback, so we're just going to cut it right off completely, and that is weak as well. Realistically, the spotted little stems here, the discoloration, that may settle down, but this will never perform well. It'll always look weak and limp. You can see it's not thickening up. These are weak branches, so that needs to be removed completely, like that. And we can get this to replace, grow some, and replacements, branch replacements. Dead wood again. For the time I finish with this and looking at it properly, yeah, see, that's weak too. This whole branch here is weak. It's sad, but it's got to go. And again over here, so, and again down here. Partly because once the head grows on top, this gets very little light. Now, I can probably cut it short, but it's more than likely it's going to die back rather than grow and sprout up anywhere. There's dead wood there as well. Take out the middle. I'm cutting like Alex now from Reservoir. I've got to stand back and have a look at this properly. It's not too bad, yeah. See, that's a little bit of a flimsy little bit there, just get it off. That double there, don't like it, and it's actually sitting a little bit high. We make, which one we're going to keep? That one there's growing out from the middle. Let's get rid of the other one. We don't need that. We'll cut that a little bit closer, like that. Outward facing bud, there isn't one there. This one is facing over here, which would work. I'd like it to grow on this side, but there's nothing. And if we take it to there, it's going to go like that, and then like that. That's ugly. So we just see if we can, yeah, that's still alive, that one. Let's cut it like that. And there's another little one down there. So a little bit harder than usual that I do on these prunes because I need it to stay smaller. I don't want it to grow any bigger than what it is, folks. I need to thin it out, as I am here, and I need to keep it intact, otherwise the heads get too big. Like, it's fantastic, but if I don't see that one there as you're looking at it, if I cut it to this year's growth, it's going to stand even taller than that this coming springtime, and it's not what I want. It's way too much. So it's time sometimes you need to reduce it. And again, this Peter timber here, look at this. Look at that. That is really just an unhealthy piece. So that's got to come off completely as well. And it's better to remove, have a few strong branches where it'll fill in. It will actually fill in. And the more I look at it, the more dead wood I see on this. Jeez, it's amazing. And even that's on its way out there too. You can see the discoloration. I'm not sure if you can tell with the camera, but see the discoloration there and the spotting that's developing, and even just over here as well. Not a happy piece, and quite red here, sort of a burnt mark on that side there. So it really isn't showing good signs, that little piece there. We may leave that for now and see if it comes good. We'll just trim it down a little bit. Look, there's already, that's dead there. Yeah, it's already dead. Nah, see you later. Leave it for nothing. Leave it for a headache. That's all we're doing. Okay, folks. So what we're talking about here, the original rose, 10, 15 years ago, it's here. That's your first year's growth there. That's been there forever and a day. All right, and as the years progress, we go into the second, third year growth because it's had a couple of cutbacks. And over the years, we've reached out to this point here where you can see it's been cut back a few times, and we're up to the current season's growth here, which is the last growing season. And that's what we've cut back to. We can cut back harder again, but you also want a balanced overall shape. There's nothing growing here because this stupid light is in the way. And we're going to try and get it to grow on that side eventually. We may actually just remove the light. But at the end of the day, open it up. So we cut to an outward facing bud, thin out the branches inside so we don't have too many gnarly bits crossing over. Look for dead disease and damaged wood, especially dieback and canker. Remove all that. Aerate it. You can cut it back to this year's growth as I've done here, or you can cut it back down to last year's growth and it'll sprout up again. Providing there's strong vitality in the plant, you know, there's good sap flow coming springtime. These are already bursting out, so this will be quite fine. A little bit damp under the foot here in this area, not going to deal with that. I think we've got a bit of a water leak going on here, but that's another issue for another day. Well, not for another day, for me to deal with as soon as you turn this camera off. And then if you need to spray them, you can use bicarb soda to control black spot and rust and things like that, or you just use eco fungicide or milk for the black spot as well, which is mixed with water. And at the end of the day, feed them. So get ready for August to feed your plants. And if you're interested in doing some rose pruning and talking about the different shapes and sizes from hybrid teas to floribundas, because there's a completely different pruning technique on them. Floribundas, you can hedge them with a bloody hedger and they'll keep bouncing back. Hybrid teas need a bit more work with them, especially if they're just bush varieties, and climbers as well. So send us a little message in the on the page here and we'll have a look, and if there's enough people interested in it, we'll set up some workshops. Otherwise, the fruit tree workshop is on, folks. Tomorrow. So if you're watching this today, it's on tomorrow, the 13th that is. That's pretty much booked out. I think there's only one spot left. The 20th, there's a few spots still there. The 22nd is pretty much filled as well. So if you want to come to the fruit tree workshop with Craig Castry and myself, make sure you book yourself in there and take advantage of the great information we're going to share with you. Also, the workshops on there, building your own garden beds and preparing your garden beds for spring planting, they're on as well in August. Check it all out on our website, vasilisgarden.com. I'm going to go inside, have a big steak sandwich, and then come outside and fix the leak. God help me. Maresi. God, that was terrible.